We are ready to start. So, looks like we've already got 15 people listening in, and more will be coming. Sometimes people wait for the little banner to show up and they see, oh yeah, there's a Q&A starting. So, then they can go ahead and
I
hop in.
even just made announcements on my own social media, so yeah.
I saw that's awesome. So I think we'll get some really good stuff today. As a friendly reminder, we have two Q&As tonight. So after Corina's, we're also going to have one with Eddie Correa Jr. You can see both of their bios in the announcements channel if you want a little bit of a refresher on what our guests worked on and what they do. But in the meantime, if you wanted to give just a little quick introduction about you and just kind of some of the roles you've done and your background in the industry, and then we can get started on the questions.
Sweet. So hi, my name is Corina Boettger. I started learning how to act when I was 5 years old because my parents were dumb enough to listen to me as a 5 year old when I said I wanted to be an actor. And started taking classes, and then 3 years later, booked my first few roles as a professional, both in voice acting and in theater. Basically worked in theater for a while, still technically do, just not as much. And then went on to work in on camera, which I also still technically do. But then I got really into voiceover about 2015 and really started to take off in that direction. So that's where my main focus is. But I still do on camera and theater as well. And you might have heard me as, of course, Paimon in Genshin Impact, and Tornado in One Punch Man, Somali in Somali and the Forest Spirit, Gauko and Naoko in Dino Girl Gauko, Sailor Moon as Sailor Tin Nyanko, uh, and Mizuki and the Somnium Files, and much more.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I think people will be really excited. I know you've also done some teaching here and there, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something people on the server have expressed interest in or said that they studied with you and learned a lot. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I still teach. I teach group classes on Sundays, and you can get more information on that if you would like off of my website. If you just email me through there on the contact part, you can get all the information for that there.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to drop that in the chat if you like. And also, we can start taking questions. So as soon as we get our first question, I will hop out here and just let Cora take the reins from here. Just to make it easier, if you guys write this little Q, it's a weird way that you have to write it. It's like regional indicator Q. But this just helps our guests to know what, if there's a question.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Cool.
looks like we got some questions, so we can go ahead and get started. Again, feel free to take them as you go, and we will be here if we need anything.
Sweet. My favorite character to voice, I can't pick just one. Because they all, here's the thing. When you start in this, every single character that you do, even the ones that don't even have names, like it could be like girl in the ballroom A, or student with spiky hair B in episode 23 for like 2 seconds, they're all stepping stones in your career. So even those tiny little things mean so much to me. For example, like I voice Bear Rabbit in um even prodigies have it easy in another world, which was like the first time that I really got to actually voice a boy character, which was even though he's small and doesn't really have that many lines throughout the entire project, like that was meant a lot to me because I was like, he's the first boy I've done, hooray. So yeah, it's all about your goal as an actor is to work consistently and regularly, and so every single job you get, you had somebody read for Bear Rabbit at your workshop yesterday? That's awesome. Okay, that's cool. But all of those little roles mean so much. you know, because it has to start somewhere. I always tell people, like, you know, you are very much allowed to get excited over even the tiniest little victories that you have, because victories are what it's all about. So you might be like, oh well, you know, it's just a, you know, student A in the cafeteria. Yeah, but that's still a good thing that you got it. You know, it's still something to be excited about. It still means you're a part of the project. Heck, I remember when I was auditioning for Sailor Moon, I knew it was the last season and it was my last chance to ever get a part of Sailor Moon, and I was like, honestly, they could ask me to do Walla and I would cry. And it turns out that I actually booked a villain, and that's friggin' awesome because, like, all of the villains in Sailor Moon are amazing. But, like, I was just happy to even get the audition, let alone, like, be a part of the show just because it meant so much to me. How's 2021 going on for me so far? Well, I just did my taxes, so I want to cry. Uh, do you think Dino Girl Gauko could work as a horror drama anime, especially since it's about a girl who turns into a dinosaur under extreme stress, all of the Incredible Hulk? I mean, it wouldn't have the same audience if that was done, like if they did like a Netflix version of a revival version of it, like if Netflix decided to do a dark version. It wouldn't have the amount of camp and fun that it has. I mean, it could be done. I'm not saying it couldn't, but part of the charm of Dino Girl Gauko is that A, it is meant for young kids. That it just so happens to be also really funny that adults like it too. Which is the goal for any show with that involves young kids, is that you want to make it enjoyable enough for the kids and the adults, because you know the adults are usually watching it with their children. But yeah, it could be done, but I think it would lose a lot of its charm. So yeah, am I excited to get back to conventions soon? Yes. I like, despite my adverse reaction to crowds, I do like conventions. I just hate being touched and hate crowds. So, you know, but I have ways to work around that, to deal with, you know, my anxieties when it comes to that. When starting out, what is the biggest adversity that you faced, whether it's other people or the work itself? I think, like, for me, it's definitely dealing with the self-doubt of, like, because even now, you still have moments where you're like, I don't even think I'm worthy of being in the same room as my coworkers. They're so much better than I am, stuff like that. But then you kind of have to sit there and remind yourself, like, no, you wouldn't have booked the role if you didn't belong here. You know, you belong, no matter what. I think that's, like, the main thing, is that to remember that, like, if you booked it just like everybody else, you belong. And yeah. Let's say you've got top of the line equipment, a well-treated home studio environment, and free time with low motivation. What's the best way to push yourself forward? Give yourself incentives. So I deal with autism and ADHD, so I know that, like, what I do is I mean, since acting pays my bills, my bird actually does rely on it. That's pretty much what gets me going. Is because, like, you know, I live with my boyfriend, and and, you know, even though he does work, it's still a group effort to make money and pay for things, and also pay for my bird. And you know, just putting into perspective that, like, okay, it doesn't matter if I want to do it or not. I have to put food on the table and I have to feed my bird. That's pretty much what motivates me, is like when I trick my brain into thinking that other people rely on it. Yeah, that definitely pushes me forward. What's my favorite Paimon line? Ooh, I like this question. So it's a line that I improv'd. It's in the Hu Tao story. And it was where it was like, and I improv'd this, and I'm so glad they kept it. A lot to unpack there. That was like my, like, I love working with MiHoYo because they allow me to improv, and then they actually keep a lot of what I improv, and I improv a lot actually. But they keep a lot more than I thought they would, which is really cool. What is my advice to those who are considering to move to LA to work as a voice actor? Be prepared. Um, I be prepared financially. Have money saved up for at least 3 to 6 months of rent and food, so that way you can find, a stable job to keep you afloat while you are also working as an actor. Um, and it's scary, but I promise you, it'll be worth it. um, because everything, if it's really worth it for you, if being an actor is everything that you need, then moving to LA is worth it, period. What are some tips to gain popularity for your project, not necessarily for voice acting, just in general? That's like honestly, it's a lot about proper, like that's a business question. And I'm not the best with business, but memes are a good thing. Also, get on TikTok. TikTok's the way to go into gaining popularity in a lot of things. Like social media is like the biggest thing right now when it comes to getting popularity on anything. So yeah. What are some things that a person should expect when getting into the profession? Expect that you will hear no a lot. And that doesn't mean that you're not good. It means you need more training. Or, like, the best thing that I got told was actually more recent. Like, within the, like, it was before COVID. I went out to have coffee with Ryan Bartley. And Ryan said to me, "You book the roles you are meant to book." And I think that's so important to hear because, like, a lot of people, I get it, like, getting auditions. So, for example, you know how I said I just wanted to be a part of Sailor Moon? That's all I wanted. But the fact that I even got the audition was, like, a big deal because you have to audition and then forget. You have to get rid of the mindset that you belong to a role. Even if you book the role, they can recast, and they have every right to. But like it's a matter of like it's not necessarily has anything to do with whether you are a good actor or not. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, you both were good. It's just somebody else brought something to the role that was different that you didn't. Because, and that's what I tell, like, in acting classes that I teach, I tell everybody, if I give everybody the same monologue, and there's 5 people in class, right? But they all have the same monologue, same words, same character, same everything, I should still get 5 different monologues because you are a different person and you bring something different to the table than somebody else would based off of your experiences in your skin, which nobody else has. That's what you bring to the table. You, like, it's always funny when somebody like, how do you be so unique in your auditions? And I'm like, because I'm just me. That's it. No one else can bring Corina to the table because I bring Corina to the table. That's what you should like. But like, bottom line is that like, don't get hooked on a role, especially if you didn't even book it yet. You might not book it, and that's just the reality of the profession. And also, it's much more healthier to have an idea of like, you know what? If I couldn't book it, at least Kaylee Mills booked it. I love her, you know, or have like, because yes, acting is competitive, but I always like to think of it as a friendly competition, and that's the best way to think about it. It's not Ryan Bartley against me. It's Ryan Bartley working to make me a better actor by one-upping me. If that makes sense. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it like, you know, it's not Kaylee working against me. It's we're both challenging each other to do better. So, you know, it's that. Hey, Corina, hope you're well. I'm moving to California later this month for my day job. Motion graphics designer. That's awesome. And I wanted to ask if you had any advice when it comes to transitioning into the VO scene there. So one of the biggest things that like I get, because there's a lot of people that like are sound engineers that do like some acting and stuff like that. And I always tell you, stop thinking like a sound engineer or like a motion graphics designer once you're behind the mic. You're an actor at that point. For example, like, like once you're auditioning to be an actor, why would you show off your editing skills? Just show off that you can act. No one expects you to be an editor when they're auditioning you to be an actor. Nobody expects you to be a motion graphics designer when you're the actor. So I think it would be that, which is like take classes to start learning how to think like an actor when you're behind the mic. What advice would you give somebody who just got their equipment but doesn't know how to start? Safely play around with your equipment. And I also highly suggest staying for the Q&A with Eddie. That's at 7 o'clock because he's a sound engineer, so he knows more about equipment than I do. And that's basically Google is your friend, but also Google's with Google carefully because there's definitely a whole lot of people on YouTube that'll sit there and say that a Blue Yeti is fine. And I'm like, I can tell the difference between a Blue Yeti and an AT2020. So you're wrong. But absolutely start safely playing around with the settings on your mic so that way you know at what point do you peak. So that way you know even before you do the line or whatever you're gonna do, where the microphone or where the gain should be for that mic, for that audio interface. And then even test it out when you sing too, because the minute you start singing, that should be at a different gain. All of it's different. Yeah. Am I nervous? I'm always nervous. It's called anxiety. What do you like most in studio VO or home recording? In studio, by a long shot. Oh God, I can't wait till we go back in studio. I hate recording from home. I like actors should never be in charge of the gain. Actors should never be in charge of the gain. And I know what you're thinking, but I do just fine recording at home. You really don't.
No, you don't.
Eddie, your Q&A's later. Shut up. Like, bottom line is that like there's so many issues with recording from home that are beyond just like, first of all, I'm not fully in the character if I have to worry about my gain. I'm not fully, like, when I'm at the studio, I never have to worry about that, so I only have one thing to worry about, which is, am I in character or not? And that's perfect. That should be, as an actor, that should be the only thing you're worried about, period. But because I'm working at home, I have to worry about, okay, am I still recording on my end? Because I have to record a backup. Am I peaking on my end? Because I can't see if I'm peaking or not, because the script's in front of me. Oh, God. And then I have to worry about, did they get me the right script? Sometimes I come up and I'm like, I definitely have a previous script that's not edited. Can I get the most recent script? Not to mention is that like I have to pay so much money for good internet, and it even still will screw up. So whole sessions will be shot to hell because the internet's not working or your equipment just decided not to work. I've had USB cords that have crapped out in the middle of sessions. I hate this. I hate recording from home. I never want to record from home again. I'm vaccinated for a reason. I will gladly go into studios. I don't care. I hate this. Please put me back in the studio. As an actor on the higher functioning spectrum, would you say collaborating with directors, writers helps you understand the personality of the character more? This was another another question I asked Kellen. So, first of all, high functioning doesn't exist. We're different functioning. High functioning doesn't actually exist. I've learned that over the years. It's all good. But basically, the best thing is a good rapport with the director. And because, like, if you're both on the same page, it's great. when you're not on the same page, it can be really frustrating, but you have to remind yourself that if it's frustrating, that you like that getting worked up about it is not going to help the problem. So I like that in the studio I can stim as much as I want, which helps me calm down. I also like in the studio that I can do anything as long as it doesn't make noise on the mic. So I bring stuffed animals with me to help with my autism. I bring certain silent toys that I normally try to play those on the break, or play with those on the break, because they do still make some noise. I mean, like I'm playing with a squishy thing right now to stim at the moment. But yeah, but also I move around a lot when I act. So I'm constantly stimming during acting, while acting, and that tends to help me calm down so that I can really think if you know things do get weird and I don't really understand, to help me calm me down and stuff. And also reminding myself that just because I don't understand doesn't mean that I'm doing a bad job. It's the director's job to interpret what the client wants. So if I'm not understanding anything, it's actually more important that I vocalize that I'm not understanding, rather than try to keep going as if I do understand, which a lot of autistic people tend to do, I've noticed. And I'm like, no, you're hurting everything. Yeah, it's much better if you say what you don't understand, so that way the director can try and get across what they actually want from you. And as far as like understanding the personality, I don't know. I tend to just look at the character and I already know what they're like. Like it's very rare that like there will be something that a director will tell me that I'll be like, "Oh, that's actually what their personality is." You know, you kind of get it when you already did the audition. When you're auditioning, you don't know what particular type of voice you're auditioning for. Is there a way to look it up? I will say don't do that. First of all, if you don't already know how to do an accent specifically, don't do it. That takes years of training to know how to do. So if you don't already know how to do it, a video on that is not going to help you within 5 seconds. Knowing how to sound naturally like you're from Brooklyn. But also, stop thinking that it requires a voice. Or stop actually thinking at all that, oh, I need to get the right voice for this character. The voice will come. The voice comes naturally. The voice is the last thing you should ever think about when auditioning for a character, period. And I say that as a person who booked Paimon. And, like, you know, we all know that Paimon's voice is all the way up here. I did not audition with that voice. That was completely different than what I auditioned with, because again, when you're auditioning, they don't care. I'm trying not to curse as much as possible. They do not care about the voice, because a voice is the last thing they're thinking of too. They want the attitude. They want to know that the attitude is going to come across, because once you're in the studio, they pretty much know like what you can handle voice-wise, and they'll fix it there. It took an hour for them to get the voice right, just right for Paimon. But the reason why I got Paimon had nothing to do with the voice, because again, I didn't audition with that high pitch. That didn't happen. Originally, Paimon was originally just right here, which is not much different than my natural speaking voice. And the only reason why I booked Paimon was because of the way I said one line, which they were like, you were the only actor who said it mischievously. And we knew that you got that Paimon was mischievous. That was what got me the role. So again, that's an attitude. That has nothing to do with the voice. It's always attitude. Voice is the last thing to concentrate on, period. What is my favorite movie of all time? There's a few though. Well, the only one I can think of I have a top 5, but Jurassic Park is definitely one of them. The original. I know it's different for everyone, but any tips for dealing with imposter syndrome? Again, you wouldn't have booked it if you didn't belong there. That's number 1. Number 2 is that it, like, now, mind you, you might be an actor that's like, I haven't booked anything yet, though. Okay, yeah, sometimes it takes 5 to 10 years before you book your first job. Steve Bloom didn't start voice acting until he was fucking 35. Excuse my language, sorry. I said the F word, I'm bad. Steve Bloom didn't start voice acting until he was 35. You can literally start at any time. John Hamm, I know he's an on-camera actor, but like he was auditioning for 10 years before he finally booked Mad Men, which of course set his career off. 10 years of booking nothing. Except one time he was on a dating show, but that doesn't really count. So, yeah. Thank you, Kira. I loved working on it. I can't wait for more. Constructive interference, not destructive. That's actually like a really good way to put it. Like, always and I think I actually saw a TikTok on this with autism and thinking of intrusive thoughts, because we get a lot of them. We really do. We're like autistic people. I mean, everybody is hard on themselves, but autistic people especially because we've been brought down our whole lives being like, you're not normal, act normal. And I'm like, I'm trying. I'm trying to act normal. I swear to God I am. And joke's on you. I act normal the best when I'm an actor. But I think that, like, it's about, okay, why do I think I suck, though? Is it because I'm not booking? Okay, well, if I'm not booking, then that means that I need to work more on acting. Or, like, work more on it, take more classes, and really just listen to my teachers when they tell me what I need to work on. Or maybe I'm not auditioning for the right roles. Maybe I have completely marketed myself wrong, because that happens too. I get a lot of people that are like, I want to be the anime protagonist, which that's great. I love that you want to be the anime protagonist, but that might not be the right way to get into the industry. Not to mention, those roles are going to have the most people auditioning for them. So if you think of it this way, those lead roles are the hardest ones to get because everybody's auditioning for them, right? And but you know what everybody is not necessarily auditioning for? The mom roles. And by the way, just because you book mom roles does not mean you're stuck there. Allegra Clark books mom sexy roles all the time, but then also is Rainbow Unicorn Butterfly, whatever the hell, on Nickelodeon. So she has range, and she's been able to book out of that, outside of that typecast that she's got. Hell, she's Bloodhound. She's Bloodhound, which is not sexy, and I mean, well, I think Bloodhound's sexy, but for a completely different reason. But is a person that we don't even know what they look like. They're completely covered and non-binary, which is awesome. You know, so it's a matter of really, really looking at yourself and being honest with yourself and being like, you know what? Maybe I'm not the lead protagonist. Maybe I'm the lead protagonist's best friend. Those roles are not auditioned for as much, and they could get you to the start into then converting, get those roles later. Not everybody starts off as the lead protagonist all the time. When I started really concentrating on voiceover, the first roles that I got were a lot of incidentals of like Kid A and stuff, and then it's a slow build, and that is the reality for most people in voice acting. They start out in Walla, then they go on to actually getting some like what they call incidental roles, which are characters that don't have a name and they may have one line. And then you move on to maybe getting your first named character that actually, you know, lasts for maybe 1 or 2 episodes. Oh my god. So it's a slow build, and thinking of it as a slow build is a lot better. And actually, I've had a lot of people that have said I would have much rather had my career slowly build rather than take off the way it did at first, of me booking the first lead role I auditioned for, and then all of a sudden I didn't work for the next 5 years. That happens too. So even though somebody may have just started out in the industry and booked their first lead role on the first audition they ever got, they might not last as long as the industry, because now they've gotten this inflated idea that they're going to be booking lead roles from now on, when really that's not the case. So, yeah, constructive interference, not destructive. Think constructively about it or change it into a like, yeah, you're going to think intrusive thoughts, but then be like, okay, how do I make this constructive so it can actually help me rather than hurt me? As an autistic actor, are you able to get accommodations in the studio? Yep. There are chairs in the studio, and as long as you ask, can I sit in the chair while recording? Yeah, you can. Um, um, and also, by the way, you're allowed to ask for breaks. Don't be afraid to ask for breaks, guys. Most directors will give you a break at the top of the hour, like a 10 to 15-minute break. But you are also allowed to ask for breaks on top of them. And I do constantly. I ask if we can take that top of the hour break early. I ask if I can have an extra break because also beyond being autistic, I'm also like physically disabled. I deal with Crohn's disease, so I will sit in sessions. I will ask for a bathroom break in the middle of a session because Crohn's disease is Crohn's disease, and I can't control that. Um, you are allowed to ask for breaks, and no one really cares as long as you do your work. You know, it's not like school where you had the teacher that was like, you just went 5 minutes ago. You know, they're not going to do that. No, I don't know a single studio. And as I said, I also bring in, as long as I'm quiet during the recording, I can do whatever I want. So I stim while I record. I also bring stuffed animals with me, because they're quiet and I just squeeze them. I have this squeezy toy that I'm currently playing with as we're talking. I don't know if you can hear it, but I play with that in breaks just because it does make a little bit of noise, so I don't want to ruin the recording. But by the way, this is also for not just for autistic people. If you deal with anxiety, this is for you too. You absolutely can ask for breaks if you need them. Because I do know some directors will not give you a break unless you ask. So you might think, oh God, that director was awful. They never give me a break. Well, did you ask for one though? Because like they won't even tell you that you need to ask for a break. They will assume that you know to ask for a break. So please ask for breaks. Ask for whatever you need, as long as it doesn't make noise. Nobody cares as long as you get the work done. Yeah, Eddie had to go upstairs already. Do you ever get anxious or shy whenever you have to voice act in front of an audience? Well, I hate to break it to you, but you always have to voice act in front of the audience. Like unless you're doing like an indie project from home, that's one thing. You're usually by yourself. But as far as like studio stuff, hell, even working from home right now, there's still people on, like the sound engineer's there, the client is there, the director is there, sometimes the scriptwriter is there, sometimes they have a lot of people there, sometimes they have 4 people there. But there's always somebody there. So yeah. And I find it like I don't necessarily get shy in front of fans. I get shy in front of the clients and the directors though, because they're the ones that sign my checks. See, yeah, fans and stuff is like one thing, but directors and clients though, considering the fact that again, they can recast you at any time, that makes me nervous. But again, like, you just have to think you wouldn't have booked the job if you didn't have to be there. Everybody gets recast at some point in their life. It's just part of the job. You know, yeah. I hope that answered the question. I'm autistic and getting into voice acting field, and I struggle with networking because of my social skills and suffer from dead face unless acting syndrome. Haha, me too. I want to be friends with other voice actors, not just for networking, but in general. How do you approach other voice actors? Well, approach other voice actors as if they're normal people, first of all, because we are. And as long as you're not wanting to be friends with us because you're a fan and you want to be friends with us because you actually genuinely like us, that's another thing. Like, if you're an actor, you're already going to be put in situations, like, and you're in LA, you're going to be put in situations where you're going to be around us. So just take it slow. I mean, relationships, I think this is like the number one thing that I had to learn being autistic. I also did not understand how to make friends until way later in life, which was letting it happen naturally. And you know, reminding myself that friendships don't happen overnight. And just letting them grow be naturally, because again, there have been some people that are like, oh, I'd like to be their friend, and then I discovered, nah, we're good as coworkers. Like we definitely would not get along as friends. We're good as coworkers. I respect them, but I don't have to be their friend. And that's generally the way with everybody, is that like I can respect actors and not necessarily be their friends, and I'm also friends with a lot of actors, so it's a matter, but again, that's because like the actors that I am friends with, I'm actually friends with them because I like them, and they can tell, they can tell that I do like them for them. Let your true colors show. It'll happen naturally. Who are some of the best mentors that I've had in my acting career, and what was the best piece of advice you ever got from them? Charlie Adler. I will say that always. Charlie Adler is the best. Like if you get a chance to take his acting classes, they are a little bit more expensive, but they are 100% worth it. And I believe the best thing, he's very vulgar, so I apologize. But what he said was, part your pantyhose and fucking do it. That was honestly the best advice I ever got from him. And then the other thing was, what are you fucking afraid of? And I didn't have an answer to that, because he was right. What am I afraid of? Nothing. Like, literally, like, the only thing that I can do is fail, but I'm failing being afraid and doing a safe take. So, yeah, that would be the best advice that I got from him. As someone who's been doing voice acting online indie work for years and wants to transition into professional studio work, what should I not do once I'm in LA in terms of networking? Getting your foot in the door. Definitely do not go to each studio in person. Oh, we do allow swearing? Good. Well, that just made me feel better. Yeah, do not go to the studio in person. Unless you actually have a meeting. Period. That's it. Definitely don't do that. That will get you blacklisted super fast. Also, generally speaking, calling doesn't help either. There are emails for a reason. Just email. And it's because, honestly, casting directors don't really have time for you during the day. They're busy doing their job. They'll look at those emails at night, for when wanting to network with a studio. Also, don't have a demo that's longer than a minute. Don't do it. And if you try to tell me, well, Steve Bloom has a demo that's longer than a minute, yeah, he's Steve fucking Bloom. Nobody's listening to his demo. They don't need his demo. They literally do not need his demo. He's Steve Bloom. So unless you are Steve Bloom, 1 minute demo. 1 minute demo. Because as a person who is friends with casting directors out here, number one thing that will get them to delete your email without even reading it is seeing that you have a demo that's longer, like 2 minutes long. Now, mind you, if it's a minute and 10 seconds, that's fine. If it's a minute and 15, you're fucking pushing it, though. Okay? Just know that. But yeah, a 2 minute demo, absolutely not. That's the number one thing to make them say no and just throw it out. And then, take classes with those casting directors. There are tons of classes out here in LA where you can actually meet the casting director themselves and perform in front of them. And that's a great way to show them what you can do and get their email so that you can network with them. There's tons of those out here in LA. Do that. Any recommendations on how to treat your home recording space? If you don't have $12,000 to get a vocal booth, which most of you don't, because I don't even have that now, thanks to my taxes. So Eddie is going to repeat this later on, probably in his thing at 7 p.m. But vinyl mass, put that on your walls, and then on top of the vinyl mass, put foam. Make sure the foam is at least 2 inches thick. 1 inch thick foam is not good enough. Also, moving blankets are great. It does make things hot though, so be aware of that. And just make sure you're covered all the way around. So, like, if you can only cover the wall in front of you because the wall behind you is kind of far back, then what I would do is put vinyl mass on the wall in front of you, put foam on that, and then behind you, set up a PVC pipe skeleton and then hang moving blankets over it is what I would do. And just make sure you're covered all the way around. Yeah. That's my recommendations. Again, I'm also very limited on my knowledge about that because I get all of my advice from Eddie, who will again be on at 7 p.m. And he's a sound engineer. So, sound engineer, honestly, listen to sound engineers. That's my recommendation to you. Listen to sound engineers, like ones that are actually working in LA, because they know what they're talking about and they know exactly what to treat with your home recording space with. So yeah, listen to Eddie at 7 p.m. That's my recommendation. Would you say an acting degree is required? No! It's not. In fact, I would highly suggest getting a business degree. So here's the thing. I have many opinions about getting an acting degree, but I can tell you right now, most people that have an acting degree are not an actor. And there's a reason for that. And it's because they get an acting degree at a place that teaches them bad habits because their college is not known for their acting program. Now, mind you, there are some colleges out there that are very much known for their acting program. So I would say, if anything, get an acting degree from there, like Harvard. But I don't think everybody has the money for Harvard, or Juilliard. But I also don't think everybody has the money for Juilliard. Basically, the few colleges that I would recommend for an acting degree all are very expensive. So at any other college, I would say get a business degree because as an actor, you're a freelancer and you need to know how to run a business. And I say that because I have had so many students that I have had to unteach bad advice from their acting coaches in college. And the worst part is when I have a student that comes to me and they go, well, my teacher used to work as an actor. Oh, used to. Used to. How long ago? 20 years ago? How does that help you work now? How does a teacher that knew how to act 20 years ago help you currently work in the industry we are in currently? How does that help you? Because my thing is that all of my teachers are currently working in the industry. Currently. Like right now. So I know I'm getting the best advice because it actually works for them right now. And I say that, remember, I've also been in the industry for over 20 years. So I know the industry from 20 years ago, and I definitely would not do the same things that I did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I would have gone in person to a studio. 20 years ago, that was the standard. But I would that's a good way to get yourself blacklisted now. And I've actually had to say to students, please don't do that. You will get blacklisted from very bad advice from teachers in colleges that didn't know what the fuck they were doing. I've also had students, I have a student right now that has a theater degree, and every time they act, they do a really bad transatlantic accent. And I was like, why are you doing the accent? They didn't even realize they were doing it. And I go, wait, hold on. You went 4 years. You paid that school 4 years for an acting degree for them to never tell you that you were doing a really bad transatlantic accent all of a sudden when you start acting? That right there tells me everything I need to know about your acting degree and how useful it is, which is it's not. And so unless the school is actually known for their acting program, because Allegra Clark went to an acting school and she's great, but her school is actually known for their acting program and was also really expensive. Yeah, I say get a business degree. and learn from teachers that are currently working in the industry and have been for at least 5 to 10 years. So yeah. Do I have any tips for not embodying the characters too deep? I struggle with delusional attachments, made worse with autistic hyper. Well, here's the thing. I think the start is thinking that you are playing somebody else. You're never playing somebody else. You're playing an extension of yourself. And I know that's going to be like, but I like being other people. Yeah, well, you're never somebody else because you don't have dissociative identity disorder. At least I don't think you do. Which if you do, that's a totally different thing. But as far as when you're acting, you are not playing a different person. You are always playing an extension or an exaggeration of yourself. Period. And if you approach it like that, you won't get into a character too deep because you're never in a character. You're always a version of yourself. The whole idea of I'm playing somebody else thing is from bad acting advice. From people like Jared Leto, we all know Jared sucks. So why are we trusting his word anyway? Also, that term method acting has nothing to do with what Jared Leto's doing. Method acting actually is talking about taking experiences that you dealt with in your actual life and replaying them in your head during that scene because they're similar. So, for example, if somebody is dying in a scene that the character really cares about, and it's that person's mother. Okay, well, my mom's alive in real life, but you know what? I cared a lot about my dog, and they died in 2017, so I can replay that in my head. That's what actual method acting is, but I'm still playing myself. So yeah, you're never somebody different. You're always, and also, I say this because not even just autistic people, humans in general really suck with empathy. You will never be somebody else. You'll never actually know what that person goes through. You can only actually see things from your perspective. So don't try. Again, it's about an extension of yourself, because I always say this with my friends or with my students is that, when you're playing a bad guy, it sucks. You're playing a bad guy, but everybody has their breaking point, and I have mine, which is, I of course would never kill anybody unless somebody touched my niece or nephew. Then I would go on a rampage. That's my breaking point. So this character also had a breaking point that was met, and they're just done with things at that point. So yeah. And so yeah, that's kind of how I deal with that. Is singing an important thing to have as a talent as a VA? No. It is not a requirement. Does it help? Sure. But, I literally, actually was in a role where they were like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna hire a singer to do this part. And I go, I'm a singer. And they go, oh, wait, you are? So, yeah, they'll hire a singer if you can't sing. But also, I will say that I've had to also sing in character where the character was not a good singer. And that's coming from me, who is a good singer. So I had to purposely sing bad so I could sound like the character is singing rather than me singing. And tips for singing, get a singing coach. There's tons of them. There's tons of good ones. Have I found any good local restaurants since I moved to LA? Yeah, tons. That's my answer for that. Oh yeah, a line from Genshin. Hold on, let me. But as per tradition, Paimon gets to pick an ugly nickname for him. How about Guhua Geek? And how do you stay in character the whole time? You have a tendency to return to your normal voice. Well, first of all, I do have the director there to make sure that if I do stray from the voice too much, he's there to kind of check that. But generally speaking, you should only be doing voices that you can hold on to. If you can't hold on to them for a decent amount of time, You probably shouldn't be doing that voice, especially if it hurts. Don't do a voice if it hurts. Absolutely never do a voice if it hurts. And I say this as a person who has witnessed people coughing up blood in sessions and then could never voice act again. So, yeah. Don't that's my answer to that. Also, like, it's about the character, really. The voice comes with the character. The voice just comes. So the minute that I'm knowing that I am the extension of myself that is Paimon, which is a tiny little sassy pixie, which is basically what I am in real life. Okay, great. Then I'm there. Vocally. How did you find your first few big roles? So again, I started out as a kid, and this was also in the 90s. So I would never suggest you find your roles this way ever again because it doesn't exist. But literally the newspaper. Again, this was when I was a kid, and it was the 90s. Completely different time. And this is also why I say a person learning from 20 years, like, who hasn't worked in 20 years, yeah, they can't help you now. And this is exactly why I say that. Because also, again, this was my mom going through phone books and looking up places, theaters in Seattle, because I lived in Seattle at the time. I'm from Seattle. But looking up like theaters and calling them and saying, whenever you do auditions for children, like, when does that happen? You know, and I would never say they do that nowadays. Never call a studio unless they expect your call. Never walk into a studio unless they expect you to be there because you scheduled the time. So yeah, big huge difference between now and when I was a child acting. So yeah. Do I have a list of actors who inspired me to pursue this path? Number 1, Jim Carrey. Exactly what I said to my parents when I said I wanted to be an actor was that I wanted to be Jim Carrey. Number 2, Richard Leadley. He's actually one of my coaches in Seattle. So if you're in Seattle, he's a great coach. Go learn from him. I think he still teaches. Oh gosh, does he? But he's amazing, and he's a director in Seattle too, so he's currently working as well. I think he is. Yeah, he is. Okay. And then Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. God, she's amazing. She's so good. I just love everything she does. Yeah. And then, would you say there is a shortage of non-binary genderqueer voice actors? No, there's tons of us. There's tons of us. Now, mind you, not all of the genderqueer or non-binary actors have come out even. I know of several that have not come out because they're afraid of public opinion and they're afraid of losing work. Which I don't blame them for that. But also, there is tons of us. There really is. We're everywhere. It's LA. LA is where gay people go to, like, survive. So you could throw a rock outside my window and hit a gay person. I mean, like, I'm non-binary. I live here. But, like, there are so many non-binary genderqueer actors in LA. There are so many. And so when I hear that studios are having a rough time finding us, I call that's a fucking lie. That's absolutely a lie. Because I'm like, I could literally walk out of your studio and find 5 actors that are genderqueer walking down the street. So again, it's not necessarily that there's not many of us. It's just that there might not be a lot of us that are out yet. And also that until recently, there really wasn't a way that studios were trying to look for us. And I'm glad that we're finally making studios be accountable of looking for people that are not even just part of the LGBTQ, but also people of color. Thank God, we need more. But yeah, that's the thing is that like, you know, when people were when studios were trying to be like, oh, but it's hard to find people of color, and I'm like, here's letter actors, and I'm like, okay, here's 100. I literally know 100. Here's a list. I literally have a list of 100. I just made it easy for you. So I know that they're lying, especially because, like, you know, you could literally just call SAG and ask. Oh, good. No, your disability does not make you less than others. We might need accommodations, but needing accommodations does not mean that we're less at all. Are auditions through agencies and auditions through talent pools exclusive from one another? Yeah, kinda. Depends. I get work through both. And so it's kind of important that you do have like, especially for the non-union stuff, generally speaking, non-union stuff doesn't necessarily go through a agency. Although I still do get some stuff through my agency, but like stuff from Texas, I don't get that through my agency because my agent's in LA. So yeah, I'm a little late because I know what's going on. Also, advice for VAs working 2 jobs, ways of balancing like an office job, having to leave for a session. Be willing to quit your job. I know that sounds crazy, but like, bottom line is, what do you want to be? An actor? Okay, so if your job says you can't leave to do this acting project, we'll fire you. Let them fire you. Let them. Be willing to lose your job. There's also jobs in LA because LA knows that 90% of us are actors, so there's a lot more jobs out here that are willing to work with it. But there also are a lot of jobs that are willing to work around your schedule. It's just just like make sure your boss knows what's going on. But also like honestly, like I flat out told several jobs that I worked with that if it's an audition or I'm doing the audition. I don't care if I get fired. Fire me, okay? Then you have to pay me severance. So at that point, yeah, please fire me. Pay me severance. And I can find another job. How do I avoid burnout? Good question. I'm still trying to find the answer to that. It is important to have balance and actually like reward yourself. And you know, take a break and recognizing that you need a break. And then also I think that also being realistic about acting and knowing all the downsides to acting is a really great way of avoiding burnout because then you already expect it to happen. You already expect it. Do I have any advice for voice actors who don't live in LA for starting out? Finding classes that you can do with people online or whatever. As I said, my class is online, so you can still get help that way. And then also the VAC obviously like posts auditions for stuff that's online all the time. Twitter's a great way to look for auditions too. I retweet a lot of auditions that pay a lot of the time. So yeah, my favorite video game, Mega Man X and BioShock. If I could say a list of classes to take, which I would recommend. First of all, mine. Which again you can get on. If you want more information on that, go to my website www.CorinaBoettger.com. You can then email me through the contact sheet thing there and ask about it. You'll get all the information for that at that point. And then Charlie Adler. If you're in Seattle, Richard Leadley. Adventures in Voice Acting is a really good place to get specifically dubbing experience, and learn how to dub. Also, voicecasting.com. They have good, that's with Marilyn Weissner. She's great. And then she also has Meet the Pro Nights, which are for where you do meet up with those agencies or casting directors and stuff like that. And can, perform for them in a class and whatnot. Richard Horvitz is fantastic. Crispin Freeman teaches. Debbie Derryberry teaches. Bill Burr teaches. He's for commercial, which also, if you're gonna do voice acting, you're gonna do commercial because commercial makes money. And considering how my taxes fucked me today, you're gonna need that money. And if you have a commercial voice, that's amazing, and I'm jealous of you. Oh my god, I know, like, my friend was able to pay off their entire multi-million-dollar house and then live off of one commercial for one full year of a Gatorade commercial. Just one. And I'm super jealous of that. And I don't have a commercial voice, so I've booked commercials before, but nothing that paid like that because I get paid like the child rate basically because I do children's stuff. So yeah. Is Del Mar Media Arts a good school to have on a resume? I'm currently taking classes from there. So if you have to ask, usually the answer is no. Usually. Mind you, I don't know of them. So that's one thing. Generally speaking, I would avoid actually saying like the actual school. I would say like the teachers you learned from in that school. If that makes sense, because that fills up your resume more, especially when you're first starting out and you don't have a lot on your resume. Instead of saying the school itself, say the actual teachers that you learned from and what specifically they taught you, because that looks better on your resume because it fills it in more. If that makes sense. Do I recommend singing coaches for training? I haven't been to a singing coach in a really long time, so I don't have any that are currently in LA. But if you're in Seattle, Dr. Sandra Glover was my opera slash musical theater coach in high school, and she's amazing. Yeah. What do you think of Sean Chiplock? Sean Chiplock's a piece of shit, and I say that as a really good friend and that loves him. I love Sean. He's also a piece of shit. Fuck him. I love you, Sean. But you a bitch. That's what I think about Sean. I love him so much. He's great. Demi girl, but I don't identify as a woman. She's it. Do you ever get dysphoria from being cast as a woman? No. And the reason why is because I don't view, bottom line is all the characters are an extension from me. So even if they are a girl and they go by she, her, and stuff like that, they're still an extension of me, which no matter who you are, you always have a masculine and a feminine side. That exists no matter what you identify as. So when I play boys, I access my more masculine side of myself. When I play girls, I access my more can I say words? The answer is no. Feminine side of myself. And I don't necessarily think it as like, oh, I am a girl. No, I'm being feminine. Which I do have. I have a feminine side to my even men have feminine sides to themselves. And anytime that a guy tries to play a woman, I always say, don't try to be a woman. You're gonna fail. The best, and I know this because in Bob's Burgers they play women really great, and it's because none of those men try to be women. They play a feminine side of themselves when they are playing those girls. So that's what I do personally that helps keep dysphoria at bay. If that helps you, I hope it does. Anything you missed from the 1990s? Uh, that doesn't exist anymore? I miss Real Monsters. That show was amazing. That's what I miss. Best way to learn accents from people who actually speak that or know that accent. Also, watching shows with that accent all the time. Also, accent coaches. They exist in LA. There's tons of them, and a lot of them do teach online. And if they work specifically with you, they can tell you exactly what to do. I know that, like, when I was a kid learning, so luckily I actually pick up accents really well. It's kind of an autistic thing, actually, funny enough. But they brought in for a show that I was doing in Seattle. We had to they brought in an accent coach where we all had to do British accents. And I remember that because the lady comes to me, here's my British accent. It was like, they're perfect at the time. Yeah, whatever. They're perfect. And I was really happy about that because I was like, yeah, my British accent is perfect. But I also like learned it in England because I traveled a lot. So yeah. But yeah, accent coaches exist. All of that. Ba-doop boop boo. Where would the best place to get constructive input concerning voice quality or suitability? Well, first of all, you don't need that because every voice is valid. You don't need that. I constantly hear people that are like, I don't think I have a voice for voiceover. Well, can you talk? Then you have a voice for voiceover. Like, literally, that is the requirement. Can you talk? Because I even get people that are like, but I have a lisp. Okay, watch any original animation right now. There is always at least one character that has a lisp. Always. I don't know a single show that's currently on the air in Cartoon Network that doesn't have at least one character with a lisp. And mind you, it might be really bad. And would it help if you got speech therapy to get out of that? Sure. But it's still useful. It's still useful. And that even goes for, like, I stutter all the time. And stutters can also be worked on. But also, like, stutters can be a good thing in acting. Stutters can be a good thing in acting. And they can make your characters more realistic. They don't necessarily help in dubbing, but in original animation, your voice is valid. Like, voice quality, again, the voice is the last thing you should think about anyway. Period. Yeah. Ba-doop boop boo. Any advice for anyone bilingual or at least how to get into another industry aside from English? LA, well, depends on well, honestly, there's so many times in LA where I need somebody who speaks Portuguese. And I'm like, oh, okay. But really, the main language that will help you in LA is Spanish. But honestly, there is a market for multiple languages in LA, all of them really. And they're constantly looking for that in LA. They need people that actually speak those languages and know them fluently. So, it's just a matter of like letting people know that you actually are bilingual. Like that should absolutely be on your resume and it should be easily spotted. Because that will help you a lot. Yeah. How did you get into pole dancing? Brianna Knickerbocker told me to take a class, and then I was hooked. And I haven't pole danced in a year because of COVID, and then also I recently got surgery, but I'm starting pole dancing again in June, so Really excited for that. How did I manage an audition for Genshin Impact? I worked with the director before on a previous project, and he told them that they should audition me. And so they gave the audition to my agent. That agent then gave it to me. I then auditioned, and then I then booked the role. Are there any tips for finding non-binary GNC roles? I can never seem to find them. It's hard because, again, there wasn't necessarily... There's getting to be more, but it is still hard. There is not necessarily a huge market for us yet, but I promise that it will get better as we require more visibility and stuff. But I constantly get auditions on a daily that's asking for non-binary roles now through my agent, actually. Not necessarily online, through my agent. Because a lot of stuff in LA is starting to have those requirements. I'm moving to LA in the near future. Quick tips for finding housing. I'm terrible at finding housing, so I'm not the person to ask that. Sorry. My roommate found the place that we're currently at because I suck at it, and I should not be given the authority to pick out housing at all. Yeah. Is it still valuable to make a resume even if you have one VA? Yes, because guess what all else can be on your resume? Classes, and classes should always be on your resume, and then you build it up as you take more classes. And yes, please make a resume, because also what you're gonna put on your resume is skills. So like, if you can do accents, if you can sing, if you can do monster noises, that skills and stuff should be on your resume, all that. Oh, do I have an advice for aspiring voice actors who can't afford classes? Save up your money. Unfortunately, that's the only thing that I can tell you. That's because that's literally what everybody else as a voice actor who has many problems has done. Is save up your money. So yeah, that's it. Sorry, I don't have anything better. How do you spell the teacher's voice? The teacher in Seattle, Richard Leadley is Leidlee. That is that one. Commercial is definitely must noted. However, what are your experience on audiobooks? So here's the thing. I asked about audiobooks not too long ago because I thought that I maybe wanted to get into it. And then I really asked about it. And it looks like the money is not good for e-learning narrators or educational books. Now, mind you, I'm coming at that from my perspective of I didn't think it was worth my time considering all of the other work that I have. Now, if I was coming at a place where I was like, I don't really have a lot of work right now, I probably would actually consider ebooks and audiobooks way more than I would currently. So I think they are a good thing to get in when you have the time to do them. It just, like, what really sucks is that audiobooks and e-learning books and stuff like that, most of them are they pay per finished hour. And I don't like that because I'm like, that doesn't take into the account how many times it took me to actually record this. Like how long it took me to actually record this. So that's generally why I don't do them. But I do know that there are many people that do them and still do them currently. And, if that's the way to make the money and you have time to do that, then do it. Perks of oh, that's not a question. Where is it? My goal is to become a professional voice actor. I mostly started early with impressions to experiment my voice, but is there any good advice with your own experience on getting to that path? Voice acting classes. Voice acting classes, voice acting classes, voice acting classes, more voice acting classes, and then take more voice acting classes. Yeah. That's my advice on that. Where do you see the future of the industry going forward post-COVID? I see it going right back into the studios because it has sucked working from home. And if you stay through to Eddie's Q&A at 7, you'll hear exactly how frustrated because let me tell you that, like, Eddie is a sound engineer. He works a lot, don't get me wrong. I have never seen him work so hard before. Like, he has 12-hour days because, yeah, your microphone may be good, but that doesn't mean that, like, every other actor that's on the same show has the same microphone. Not to mention, even if we all did have the same exact equipment, we're not in the same room. That alone changes the way that that everything sounds. And the sound engineer now has to make everybody sound like they're in the same room, which takes forever to do. The studios have lost money because of COVID. And that's also because, as I said before, COVID proved that could we record from home? Sure, if we absolutely have to, but it also proved that this sucks and it never needs to happen again. And it really, like it absolutely sucks. And I hear that, like, because again, Eddie's in the behind the scenes stuff, so I hear a lot more from studio people that complain on the daily basis that this is the worst and that they can't wait until we get back into the studio. Like, yeah. Do you think having it on your social media accounts would reflect badly on, even if they're not on your actual resume? Yes. I think they would, and I know they would. Because now, if they're under a different stage name, then just never admit that it was you. And in fact, I've constantly told my students, do fan dubs, just don't do it under your name. Do it under a completely different name that if anybody asks you about, you can then say, nope, wasn't me, must have been somebody that sounds like me, weird. What are they gonna do? Prove you wrong? Your face isn't on there. So, like, yeah, always do it under a different name and never admit that you ever did it. But yeah, as long as your name is on the fan dub, it can hurt you. And again, I know that because I've witnessed people get recast because they've done fan dubs before. So, yeah. What is something that being autistic has helped me in the voice acting industry? Picking up accents. I have been told several times that I am the only American that they know that can actually pull off a proper English accent from London specifically, but that's also because I know where my accents come from. Oh, also a Manchester one. I do a London accent, South London accent, and then I can do a Manchester accent and a Liverpool accent. And I have to know, like, it's funny because anytime somebody tells me that they can do an English accent and I ask where specifically and they can't answer that question, I know they can't do an English accent. But autistic people do tend to pick up accents really well. And that's, like, actually a thing. So, yeah. That's what I found. What are the best voice acting classes you've seen so far to get into? Charlie Adler's. Charlie Adler's class is my favorite, and he's one that I will redo forever and ever and ever and ever. And I will constantly always tell people to take his class. And every time I take his class, I book something. And that's not me exaggerating. It's literally every time I take a class with him, I book something. So, yeah. So Richard Leadley doesn't have a website or an IMDb, and the reason why is because he does mostly theater, but like, bottom line is, as long as you get a good acting coach, you don't necessarily need, like, you can get a voice acting coach later if you're in Seattle, though, and you just need an acting coach to get started, because, like, I would suggest him now, even. But Richard Leadley, yeah, he doesn't have an IMDb because IMDb doesn't do stage productions. And yes, I've dealt with imposter syndrome. I deal with it on the daily. And again, I try to take those intrusive thoughts and be like, okay, how do I make this constructive instead of destructive? What do I love about voice acting? That I can literally play any character and I'm not subjected to what I look like. as the defining, like, because of it's on camera and theater, part of like you getting the role is what you look like, unfortunately. And that sucks because I can't tell you how many times I've been told, you're definitely the better actor. We just couldn't see you as the role. And I'm like, cool, thanks. Awesome. That's great to hear. But yeah, in voice acting, it doesn't matter what you look like. Well, it shouldn't matter what you look like. There have been certain cases where it has, which is stupid. But it's definitely happens less in voice acting that happens. What do I do to wind down after stressful recording sessions? Video games. I play video games. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but would you say there's any harm in taking classes? Actually, so Sage, what I would say to that question, because the question is like, is there harm in taking classes for a short span of time? Or would it be better to space out classes? Generally speaking, the only thing that you need to know is that you are going to be continually taking classes even as a working actor. Now, how you space them out is up to you. And that and that I would say is a personal thing. If you think you get more from taking classes on a weekly basis for like a certain amount of time, then do that. Or if you think you do better taking classes, like, because even Charlie Adler, like, he does a month-long, like, once a week class for like 4 weeks, right? And he even says, don't take a class for a while after his class, just so that you can, like, absorb all the information you got, right? And so it really is up to you and how you feel when it comes to that. Just know that once you start working as an actor, your classes don't stop. I still take classes even now. The spelling one more time is Leidlee, Leidlee. No worries. What materials do I recommend to treat a home? I recommend you stay for you leave that question to Eddie at 7 o'clock because Eddie is the sound engineer and he knows way more than I do about that. So he would know how to treat your home. So ask that question with Eddie at 7 o'clock. Being so passionate about video games, how often do you judge some of the voice acting in them? All the time? I don't watch something without saying something about the voice acting. Like, I mean, like, hell, when Eddie's playing Resident Evil and streaming it, and we were talking about how good the voice acting was in that. So, yeah. Every time I play them. Yep. So since gender came up, do you know of any coaches that specialize in or have experience with trans and non-binary VO who are also trying to learn MTF or FTM voice training? So as far as like actual voice training, go to a singing coach. Like they can help you when it comes to like either like making your voice sound deeper or higher or anything like that. Versus an actual acting coach, like a voice acting coach, is going to teach you how to act. They're like voice acting coaches very rarely talk about the voice. Or if they do, it's more like make it growly or doing little changes, but they don't actually necessarily teach you how to do the voice itself, really. They don't go into a lot of that because acting is always going to be about voice acting is always going to be about the acting first. So voice acting coaches are very rarely going to concentrate on that versus if you go to an actual singing coach and tell them, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, they can actually, because like when I was learning how to sing and stuff, you go over how to expand your range, meaning you're going to make it lower or make it higher, depending on what you're working on at that point. So go to a singing coach. What is the worst piece of a voice acting advice you've ever heard? To literally walk into the studio and demand to see the casting director. Huh. That was some of the worst. to cry on cue, just pinch yourself. That's another really bad one. I was like, or you can actually, you know, feel the emotions and like actually look like you're crying and sound like you're crying because you're actually crying. You know, that's another good one. That was really bad. And uh yeah. What has been my favorite line in a project? Oh, I don't think there's so many though. There's so many good ones. So for now, I'm just gonna leave it to the Hu Tao one, like from before with the one that I improved, because that's the only one I can think of. But it is one of my favorites for sure, which is the one where it's like there's a lot to unpack there. Because again, I like when I get to improv, and I like when they keep it. Have I ever had a fan moment where meeting a voice actor that you looked up to? Oh, I have a really funny story about that. Okay, so because mind you guys, again, voice actors are people. I get excited about meeting certain people too, but again, and especially in a situation where you are working, you have to be professional. And I was working on with Cartoon Network, so I was already freaking out because it was Cartoon Network. And it was my first time working with Cartoon Network. And it was on the show Splitting Time. And you can find that show on Cartoon Network's YouTube channel. It's really cute. Go watch it, because the more that people watch it, the more chances that they will pick it up, and that would be really awesome. But Fred Tatascore and Stephanie Lemlin played my parents in it. And I freaked out because first of all, I freaked out because I booked it. Second of all, they sent me an email and they're like, yeah, everybody that's going to be there that day because it's a group record. And then it has Stephanie Lemlin and Fred Tatascore's name on the fucking sheet. And I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. Literally Dad 76 and friggin' Artemis from Young Justice is gonna be sitting next to me and I can't, oh my God. Okay, so I have to calm the fuck down because I still have a job to do. So I was like, what you're gonna do is you're gonna just put all of your energy into the script like you normally do. You're a professional. You can do this. You've done it your whole life. So we go through the first 2 hours of recording without a hitch, and I'm just like, okay, good, that was good. You did it. You concentrated just on the script. You were a normal human being for those 2 hours, I'm pretty sure. So you didn't come off as weird to Stephanie Lemlin, who's sitting right next to you. So we took a break because it was like in the middle of the recording, 2 hours in, and I went to the restroom, and Stephanie Lemlin is in there washing her hands, and I go to the stall, and all of a sudden Stephanie is like, Corina, where did you learn how to act? And I was like, I'm in the bathroom. Why are we asking this question here? But okay, I'm gonna answer because it's Stephanie Lemlin. And I go, so I've just been acting since I was a kid, and took a lot of classes from Charlie Adler and stuff. And she's like, oh, I love Charlie. I just wanted to say that because I hope you don't think that I'm weird. I've been staring at you the entire time because you are so entertaining. And I about fell in the goddamn toilet. I was like, oh my God, no. Oh God, she's staring at me while we're... And I didn't notice, though, because I put all of my energy into the script, which thank God that I did, because otherwise I probably would have freaked out and been like, why is Stephanie staring at me? But yeah, she's like, I hope you don't think I'm weird because I've just been staring at you. You are so entertaining and you're so good. And yeah, I almost fell into that toilet. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. That's... thanks. I really appreciate that. Oh, and congrats on, Young Justice coming back, because at the time there was recently an announcement that Young Justice was coming back with a third season. And then so we talked about that for a little bit. But yeah, that was my moment on that one. Yeah. How is the transition moving from Seattle to LA like for me? I don't know. I by the time I moved down here, I kind of already felt that I lived down here because I was coming back and forth from here. Already. I was a working actor. when I was a teenager, I started working in LA already. So I was flying down to LA to work as an actor. So I kind of already felt that I lived down here because I kind of did. Um, so it was kind of simple, really. Um, what's the best part about working in a studio? That I don't have to worry about anything. That I don't have to worry about the gain. I don't have to worry about things working because if things don't, I just get to sit back, relax, and drink water. And I literally don't have to worry about a damn thing. If something doesn't work, I know it's not on my end because we're in the studio and none of this equipment is mine. If you know, something goes wrong, definitely, like, I don't have to worry about it. And like, I honestly think it's more intimidating to work from home because, again, I have to worry about so many other things going wrong, and I don't like that. Memorable character I played from a stage show. Ooh, good question. I was in The Pillow Man, which is one of my favorite shows I've ever been in, and I played the character Girl, which, again, so I didn't have any lines, but the reason why the character was memorable is because I technically played 3 characters in the entire show. I played a zombie child in the first part of the show, which was basically the corpse of a child. I played the corpse of a child. I played a little girl who thought she was Jesus. She actually thought she was the second coming of Jesus. Great character. And then the third character I played was a deaf girl covered in green paint. And if you read that show, it's called The Pillow Man. It's written by Martin McDonagh. It makes sense. Also, one of my favorite shows because I was 16 at the time when I got the show, and it was with a company that I'd worked with before, and they were like, "We don't want to audition with you. We just want to know if you're like comfortable with the show, and if you are, we'll just give you the role." And I was like, "Okay, what's the show?" And they're like, here's the script, read it, and if you're comfortable with it, then we'll just hire you." And I read it, and they were like, "By the way, this is a comedy." And I go, "Wait, what? This is a comedy? Okay, I have to be in this show because I have to figure out how the fuck is this a comedy?" And that's exactly what I told the director. So then I booked the role because I just really wanted to figure out how it was a comedy. And it is. It actually is a comedy. It's a very good show. Also, Martin McDonagh is now my favorite playwright, and he also did another great movie. One of my other favorite movies is Seven Psychopaths. Go watch it. It's written by him. Sorry, that was the movie that I was missing. So Jurassic Park and Seven Psychopaths. It's amazing. What are some of my favorite Broadway musicals? Sweeney Todd. I love musicals that kill people and put them into pies. What's my opinion on having a placeholder demo reel to make? Yeah, actually, so that's actually a really good question, Jill. Jill Dog. I hope I said it right. I used to be against it. Used to be. Until now I say do make yourself a placeholder demo reel until you can get a professional one done. And don't get a professional one done until you're ready. Because, you know, professional ones cost like $1,000 and you don't want to pay $1,000 for a demo where you're not ready and your acting's not up to snuff. Versus make yourself a placeholder one for now for really cheap or for no money, make it yourself, I don't care. And show as many characters as you can in a minute. They only need to be a minute long. So 5 to 10 characters, that's it. And the only reason why my thoughts have changed on this is because of the internet. Because back like a few years ago, I would have said, don't make a demo until you're ready. Like, just don't do it and don't make your own demo. Which, professionally wise, don't make your own demo. But making a placeholder demo, just make it yourself. Yeah, do that. And the only reason why is because, again, there are online auditions for indie games where they will say, give us a demo and then we'll give you the audition, which I think is bullshit. They shouldn't be asking for a demo because if they're not paying the industry standard, they should definitely not be asking for a full-on professional demo. But generally speaking, they think the reason why indie games do that is because they think that, oh, if you have a demo, that must mean you're a professional, which of course that's not the case. Anybody can pay for $1,000 demo. So yeah, get a placeholder demo for now. 100%. Just make sure that you understand that you will need a professionally done demo to save up for eventually so that you can get those more professional stuff that we're talking about from actual like studios and get like an agent and stuff, you know? Um are actors able to live off well with just voice acting? God, I wish we could. There are some of us that can. But there's a reason why we go to cons to begin with, and we are not there to have fun. We're there to work, and it's because we're getting paid to be there. So that helps pay the bills. A lot of us Twitch stream now, because it helps pay the bills. Voice acting is expensive, and it's a long time before you're able to pay the bills with just acting. It's a long time before that. And also, just because one year you're able to pay all of your bills with voice acting doesn't mean the next year you will, because voice acting is freelancing and you might not book as many roles the next year. Who knows? So yeah, that's also something to consider. How did Eddie and I first meet? We actually met at a studio. We met at Bang Zoom for it was a cast party for Erased because I was in that show and he was there because his stepmom was in the show, and so she brought him, and that was where we met for the first time, and we've been together for 2.5 years. But we met like 4 years ago. What is the method for screaming lines? Do it safely. And you learn, by the way, if you get a singing coach, they'll teach you how to scream safely without hurting your voice. I learned because of opera. Funny enough, opera teaches you how to scream properly. And how far back do I back away? I don't, because I just use the gain. There's a gain for a reason. So I don't have to back up if there's gain. So yeah. One of my biggest concerns of going into voice acting classes is the lack of money or how expensive it is. Have you been in that situation and what did I do? Yeah, I'm poor. And I saved up my money. It really comes down to that. And I wish there was like a better thing that I could say, but there really isn't. It's just about saving money and knowing what that money is going towards. And also paying classes for teachers that are actually going to help you. It really does suck when somebody says, "Oh, I learned from this person." And I'm like, why? Why did you pay that person money to teach you how to act when they've maybe had one project under their belt and only been acting for half of a year? Why would you pay that person? Okay. You know, or like it's why like I say that college, like learning how to act from colleges, you know, be careful, like make sure the college is actually known for their acting program, because you don't want to spend all that money on a degree that's pointless. That's expensive. So yeah. Have I watched Hamilton? Yes. Someone shy and worried about being in a recording studio with other voice actors. Is it not intimidating, or am I overthinking about it? Actually, so here's the thing. It is intimidating. I'm not going to deny that. But I've actually said this. So instead of trying to pretend you're not feeling the feelings that you're feeling, because that does not help you, that actually works against you. The more that you try to say, "I'm not nervous, I'm not nervous, I'm not nervous," that makes things worse. And you will get more nervous from it. Versus if you actually acknowledge, "Okay, I'm nervous." And that's okay. It's okay to be nervous. I'm allowed to be nervous. That actually helps me more, acknowledging that I'm having those feelings versus trying to hide them. Trying to hide them is always worse. And actually, I do find that like being in front of people at a studio is honestly worse for me than being in theater in front of a huge big crowd, because in a big crowd, I can't concentrate on just one face. There's too many people. Versus in a studio, there's like 4 or 5 people. So I can easily concentrate on one face and look at their face and be like, oh, they don't look happy. Holy fuck. Oh, they're not happy. But then again, I'm like, okay, so I'm nervous. It's okay to be nervous. It's 100% okay to be nervous. So what am I going to do about it? Well, you're going to do what you always do, which is concentrate on the script. You're not going to look up from your script. You don't have to look from your script. You don't have to look at their faces. Their faces are not part of the job. You don't have to look at them at all. In fact, Charlie Adler, when I take classes with him, anytime that I did look over at him, he'd be like, "What the fuck are you looking at me for? Am I gonna give you a cookie?" And that was also very helpful. And because no, the answer is no. I don't have to look at them. It's not a requirement. And in fact, don't look at them. It's so great because as somebody with autism, you know, with ABA therapy, they're like, you have to look at people's eyes. But in voice acting, I get to look at no one. I get to literally just look at my script and not look at anybody in their face. It's fantastic. So yeah. How do you know when you're ready for a professional demo? When your teachers tell you you're ready. Your teachers will actively be like, do you have that character on your demo? You don't have a demo made yet? Good, put this character on your demo. They will talk to you about it. And you'll notice. Yeah. And you can also ask your teachers, do you think I'm ready for a demo? You can ask that question. And they'll be able to say, you know, start thinking about what characters you want to put on it, but I think you need a little bit more time or something like that. You know, yeah. Funniest voice acting group chat moment? Most of them, like, I don't remember. I know they happen. I just don't remember them. Honestly, you know what? I have a YouTube, like, okay, so I do streaming, and this was at the time that Christian was actually testing out his streaming. Christian Banis, he's another voice actor, and I put it on my YouTube. I called it Banana Bread. It's like a 2-minute video max, and it's hilarious. Watch that, and that will give you an idea of what we talk about when we're alone too, because that's exactly what would happen. But yeah, it was a great moment. Funniest memories or moments at the recording studio. Anytime I have to argue with Chris Fiella about how dandelion is pronounced, because it's dandelion, and I don't care if he's my fucking director. He can fucking suck it. It's dandelion, not dandelion. He's wrong. Yeah. What's the best way to get your feet wet if you're in an area where it's not possible to go into a studio and have to voice act online? Again, you're like right where you need to be, because the voice acting club has like literally that thing up there that says casting call paid, casting call unpaid. Also, if you are going to a college that happens to have an animation like program, start making friends with those animation people, because they will need voice actors for their projects, and they definitely don't want to voice act it themselves. Animation students are your best friends, and those animation students will normally go on to work on bigger and better things, and they will remember who helped them in college. Yeah. Did I record Paimon lines in studio or at home? For 2019 up until January 2020, we were recording in the studio. But then, I mean, no, up until March 2020, we recorded in the studio. And then from here on out, it's been from home. But again, that's soon about to change, because I hate working from home. And I really badly want to go back into the studio. So I've flat out said, please put me back in the studio. Yeah. Should you also use a pseudonym if you're doing that for safe work? Yes and no. I do, but everybody, like, I mean, it's pretty much well known in the industry that a lot of us do Nuts for Safe Work, and we almost all have a pseudonym, not because we are actually trying to hide it, but only, almost because it's like tradition, if that makes sense. So have a pseudonym, but everybody's gonna know it's you. Any ideas for teachers we could look into for voice acting? Ah, yes. Again, Charlie Adler's great. I teach online, so you can go on my website and email me there and ask about my classes. Debbie Derryberry teaches. Crispin Freeman teaches. Richard Horvitz teaches. Bob Bergen teaches. Bill Holmes teaches. Adventures in Voice Acting. They're great. Voicesvoicecasting.com. Oh, I missed Voice Tracks West. They're great. My classes are every Sunday, not once a month, every Sunday. And you can take them as many times as you want. Yeah. What is one thing you wish you had known starting out that you learned later on in your career? Stop trying so hard. Like that's real, like, and that's specifically for me. I tried so hard when I was learning how to cry on cue. I was like, will you fucking cry? Cry! Ah, cry! And then I learned, like, oh, if you actually, like, don't try that hard and actually, like, concentrate more on, like, the circumstances that you're under as this character or whatever, and really believe those circumstances and whatnot, oh shit, crying on cue becomes much easier. Oh shit, that's all it took? Well, fuck, and now I can cry on cue, no problem. Yeah. When it comes to improv, I tend to think about worrying whether the things I speak is correct or funny. Don't worry about that. Because if you worry about it being funny, it won't be funny. So when it comes to improv, the funny thing is that, like, and this is kind of, like, mind you, I've been training in improv since I was 12 years old from the person who invented the Groundlings, Gary Austin, may he rest in peace. And then I also went to the Groundlings as well. Don't try to be funny. You will not be funny if you try being funny. And again, that kind of also goes on, like, my whole thing about crying on cue is that, like, what stopped me from crying on cue is trying too hard to cry. Same thing with being funny. Don't try to be funny. And also with improv, it's if it feels right, do it. If it doesn't, don't do it. That's literally it. If it feels right, do it. If it doesn't, don't do it. How did I first discover Charlie Adler? Oh, my friend Jeremy Bloom told me about him, and Jeremy Bloom is the son of Steve Bloom. Also, Steve Bloom teaches classes. I forgot to say that. Steve Bloom teaches. So, yeah. That's how. Like, Steve and Charlie are super close, too. Like, they're super close. Is there any other questions before Eddie starts at 7? Which, by the way, please stay, like, any sound engineering stuff, that's all questions for him, not me. He's the expert on that. So stay for that. Have I ever gotten an audition where you have to ad-lib? Yes. They will say ad-lib in the script. Out of every anime you have voiced in, which one did you have the absolute most fun with? Probably Dino Girl Gauko, only because I technically voiced kind of two different characters, I guess. But also, that show is so much fun. That show is so silly and fun. Yeah. Oh, I asked you of your favorite Charlie Adler role. Oh, favorite Charlie Adler role is Mr. and Mrs. Bighead from Rocko's Modern Life. It's 10 p.m. You're done with work. You're sitting down with your video games, drinks, and snack choices. Vodka and chocolate with caramel. How often does improv come in during voicing? Anytime I want it to, because I improv anytime I feel like it's right. Literally, that's literally it. Anytime I feel like improv is appropriate, I'll do it. Because again, improv is done well when you just know it's right. Like if it feels right, do it. If it doesn't, like you're always going to do 2 or 3 takes anyway. So do 1 take with the improv if it feels right to do, and then do the next take exactly how they wanted it. Any current goals in voiceover? I've not worked with Disney yet. I would like to work with Disney. Out of the big 3 here. Were you ever surprised that you were cast in something even though... Yes! Oh my god, where's Waldo? How the fuck did I get cast as that character? I literally... Oh my god. I remember doing that one and it was like 2 in the morning and I was like, oh shoot, I have this audition that's due at 9 in the morning. Well, you know what? It's 2 in the morning. I'm gonna do it now so that way I can sleep in. And then I looked at it and it was like, oh, it's an adult scientist. Well, I'm not gonna book this role anyway, so I might as well just phone it in and turn it in, whatever. And I ended up booking it. And I remember my agent calling me, and they were like, "You booked a role," and I was like, "Okay." And they were like, "It's for Where's Waldo?" And I go, "Wait, really? Why?" I actually asked my agent why, and they were like, "Well, DreamWorks loves you," and I'm like, "They do that one?" All right, okay. So yeah. Big red flags for auditions that you wish you knew about before auditions. I mean, usually if there's anything like that's sensitive, they'll tell you about it beforehand. But I've also walked off of projects before because there was stuff that they definitely didn't tell me where I was like, I'm not okay with this. So, you know, it happens. In the studio, is it lax enough where you can joke with the director? Oh, I joke with the directors all the time. As long as you get your work done, no one cares. But also, like, I've yelled at Chris Fiella over the pronunciation of words every time it comes up because apparently it's Dandelion. He's a fucking idiot. It's Dandelion. I love you, Chris. You're wrong. So yeah. What happens if you run out of stuff to ad-lib with? Then I don't ad-lib. That's it. If you don't have anything to ad-lib with, you don't ad-lib. Hobbies that I like to do besides voiceover? Yes, knitting. I really like knitting and crocheting. Have I ever booked Foley? No, that's a completely different job. Foley is a completely different job. That's actually more on a sound engineering side. Oh, no, it's not even sound engineering. It's sound designing. And there is a difference. There's sound designing and there's sound engineering. Foley is not something they would ever hire an actor to do. Foley is something that they would have a sound designer do. What was my favorite line as Mizuki from the Somnium Files? The line where Mizuki talks about how they really look up to the LGBT community because, of course, I loved that line. That was really cool. How did I adopt Zulu? I adopted Zulu by finding an ad on Craigslist. Oh, there's my bird. I have a bird on my shoulder now. How difficult is it when dubbing anime to match lip flaps? Very, very hard. It's the hardest thing to do, which I also don't understand why it doesn't pay. Dubbing an anime pays the least amount out of everything. And yet it's the hardest to do out of everything. And I don't understand that. I always understood that if something was harder to do, you got paid more for it. But that's completely the opposite. So yeah. Is location important when finding a good job in Saudi Arabia? But I'd like to get more voice acting gigs. I mean, here's the thing. There is voice acting in every country. You just have to be in the city in your country where voice acting is done. For example, in Canada, voice acting is done in Vancouver or Toronto. So you kind of need to be in Vancouver or Toronto. if you're in Canada. Also Calgary, cool. Didn't know that one, but yes, also Calgary apparently. So find the place that is like the LA of your country, if that makes sense. Would you like to work on more TV commercials in person after COVID's done? I mean, I've been auditioning for stuff now. So if I book it, I book it. You don't get to pick your roles, you just get stuck with what you book. No, it's not impossible for you to get an acting job where you are. Again, it's just about being where, like, there is voice acting in Saudi Arabia. They have stuff in Saudi Arabia. So Funimation is nearby. Have you ever worked with Funimation? What was your experience? I've kind of worked with Funimation, but not really. So I worked on a Funimation show, on a few Funimation shows, but they were recorded at Bang Zoom. So I've not actually worked with Funimation themselves as far as like recording though. So I don't have that experience. I mean, I live in Burbank, but as long as you live somewhere in LA, you're fine. You don't have to be in Burbank. You can be in Sherman Oaks. You can be in Reseda, which is where I was before, actually. For 10 years out here in LA, I lived in Reseda. I only moved to Burbank actually because it is technically closer to a lot more of the studios. But I moved here more because of my disability and accessibility rather than just because it was close. It's more because I needed to be closer because it was getting hard for me to do those long drives. Because it's actually not that long of a drive, it's just traffic. Really. So yeah. Best convention experience that I've had? I don't know. There's been a lot of good convention experience. I love ALA the most. So all of the times that I've been at ALA. I do not know if San Diego has any good studios, but considering that they're San Diego and not Los Angeles, probably not. Nobody goes to San Diego to be an actor. You go to LA to be an actor. Would I say that most of my income is coming from agency bookings? Right now, mostly from agency bookings, yes. Mostly. But that also fluctuates. Right, Burbank is where Nickelodeon is located, but Nickelodeon doesn't actually record on the lot all the time. Cartoon Network is also here, but it doesn't necessarily record on the lot. Also, I work with DreamWorks on 2 different shows right now, and they don't record on the DreamWorks lot. So, doesn't really translate. In fact, like Cartoon Network for Young Justice, they recorded at Bang Zoom. That's North Hollywood. So, I mean, I can literally see Cartoon Network's building from my house, but for Young Justice, which is a Cartoon Network show, they recorded that at Bang Zoom. Inner Norman Bradley, what is a question you wish we would have asked this evening, and what would be my answer? I don't know. I'm not smart. Geez, I don't know. I'll see if I come up with an answer and get back to that one. Is there an area without a dedicated voice acting hub location? I would assume that the chances of building higher class resume actually with a higher connection jobs would be near impossible. I mean, anywhere that doesn't have a voice acting, like, cause like, at least in Seattle, there is a decent amount of like professional theater and having professional theater on your resume looks really great. Same thing with New York. You can get in professional theater stuff there, and that looks really great on your resume if you move out to LA to want to do voice acting. And there is some voice acting in New York, and there's also some voice acting in Seattle. It's mostly in very rural areas that you're not going to get any sort of acting whatsoever. That would be where it's really hard to get into. It's not impossible, but it's hard. How do I get started? Classes. Take classes. That's how you get started. Way more strict than dubbing anime, in your opinion on that? I have not... What do you mean by strict? Because I disagree with that wholeheartedly. On, like, a lot of levels. Oh, yeah, I need to be cut off. We gotta transition over to Eddie, though. Thank you all for having me. Eddie is here. Yeah, thank you. I will, I hope I answered most of your questions well, and thank you for having me. And, take my classes. I can answer more of your questions in my classes, and I answer a lot of questions in my classes, and I teach you how to act as well, so, yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.